So I want you to picture a massive construction site. You know, the exact kind I'm talking about here.
Oh, yeah, totally. The ones taking up a whole city block.
Right. You've got these towering cranes swinging tons of steel through the air. You've got hundreds of workers in high-vis gear moving like this coordinated army.
Concrete mixers just constantly churning in the background.
Exactly. And, you know, when you look at a scene like that, you naturally focus on the physical building going up because it's tangible. It's just right there in front of you.
The obvious thing to look at, yeah.
But here is a question for you. What actually keeps that entire project from collapsing? And I don't mean structurally. I mean financially or legally.
Well, it is the perfect question to start with, because beneath all the physical steel and the concrete, there is this second, totally invisible, equally complex structure holding everything together.
And it's not made of steel?
No, not at all. That structure isn't made of iron. It's made entirely of paper and deadlines and legal obligations.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are going to decode the role of the person whose entire job is to manage that invisible structure.
The contract administrator.
Right, the CA. We're exploring what this role actually does on a daily basis. We'll look at the incredibly unique kind of hybrid skills required to survive the pressure of it.
Because it is a lot of pressure.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to see why, according to the data we are looking at today, it has become such a highly lucrative career path.
We really do have a revealing stack of sources today. We're unpacking this comprehensive 2026 industry guide that details the day-to-day reality of this role.
And it covers educational pathways too, right?
Yeah, education, skill requirements, and some truly fascinating global compensation data. It basically paints a picture of a job that is, well, arguably the most critical unsung hero on any mega project.
But before we get into those huge salary numbers, we really need to define what a contract administrator actually is. Because, look, looking at our sources, my first assumption was totally wrong.
You thought it was just filing paperwork, right?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was just a glorified filing clerk.
Huh?
But they operate dead center at the intersection of three highly complex construction domains.
They absolutely do. So if you visualize a Venn diagram of a mega project, the CA sits right in the overlapping center.
Okay, paint that picture for us.
So on one side, you have project management and planning. This includes the project managers and quantity surveyors.
And just as a quick aside for the listener, quantity surveyors are the folks who actually, measure and price out the materials and labor required.
Right, exactly. So that's your boots on the ground operational side.
Okay, so what's the second circle?
The second circle of the diagram is legal and risk. This is your legal counsel and procurement teams.
The ones drafting the heavy legal language.
Precisely. And then the final circle is commercial and cost. So you've got operations, legal, and cost. The CA is the central hub connecting all three of those.
See, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second here on behalf of the listener. Because, I mean, if a project already has a project manager handling the physical building,
right,
and they already have high-powered legal counsel to draft the contracts, why do they need a completely separate administrator? It sounds, like corporate bloat.
It does sound like that on paper.
Why isn't the project manager just enforcing the contract they signed?
So that is the exact trap a lot of failing construction companies fall into. They assume the project manager can just do it all.
Well, they can't.
No. And the source material gives a really short breakdown of why this doesn't work. It separates the overarching contracts manager from the contract administrator.
Okay, lay out the difference there. Because to an outsider, those titles sound identical.
I know, they really do. But the horizons they are looking at are completely different. A contracts manager or legal counsel is focused on long-term strategy.
So they're looking at the big picture.
Exactly. Risk allocation, high-level negotiation before the ground is even broken. They build this dense 500-page legal framework. But a contract is ultimately just a piece of paper. It doesn't enforce itself.
Right. You can't just slap a contract on a pile of dirt and expect a building to appear.
Exactly. So the CA is the translator.
They are taking that 500-page dense legalese and turning it into actual, daily instructions for the folks in the muddy boots.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The CA is purely tactical. They are in the trenches every single day, acting as the machinery that actually allocates rights and deadlines and risks on the job site.
So while the project manager is out there focused on, pouring concrete before it rains,
the CA is tracking the daily notices. They're managing the compliance registers and the payment administration, all to ensure the company actually gets paid for pouring that concrete.
Okay, so how does that translate to the day-to-day? Because the guide mentions these 5 pillars of commercial protection.
Yes, the 5 pillars.
But I want to understand what a CA's typical project lifecycle actually looks like, from the moment they win the bid to the day they hand over the keys.
Well, let's weave those pillars into the life cycle because it really is a constant balancing act. When a project kicks off, which is the award and mobilization phase, the CA isn't just selling the big win.
What are they doing instead?
They are aggressively familiarizing themselves with the fine print. They're setting up really rigid administration systems. They need to know every single deadline and obligation.
Well, this is where they establish their first pillar, right? Protecting the company's contractual entitlement.
Exactly. They're essentially building the defense system before the war even starts.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what happens next?
Then you move into the execution phase. The dirt is actually moving. This is where the CA's daily grind really takes shape.
So they're just pushing paper around.
It's way more than that. They are constantly monitoring correspondence, tracking milestones, ensuring insurance bonds are up to date. They are maintaining compliance, which is another one of those pillars.
But construction projects never, ever go exactly as planned, right? There's always friction.
Always. A blueprint never survives contact with the actual construction site.
Right, like you dig a hole and you find solid bedrock where the survey said there was just soft soil. Or materials get delayed at a port somewhere.
And that reality right there triggers the most volatile phase. Change and claims.
Okay, so what does the CA do when that happens?
The CA now has to evaluate and formally document these unforeseen events. They have to control the change, which is the 3rd pillar. They can't just let the site manager say, sure, dig through the bedrock, we'll figure out the cost later.
Right, because if it isn't documented properly, the client might just refuse to pay for all that extra machinery and time it took to break the rock.
Precisely. So the CA has to proactively notify everyone and manage the claim. That's pillar 4.
And they have to do that without making everyone mad, I assume.
Right. They utilize those accurate records to prevent the issue from turning into a massive hostile lawsuit.
Right.
Which is the final pillar dispute prevention.
And they do this all the way through to the end.
All the way through to the final closeout, yeah.
Yeah.
Where they manage the release of retention bonds.
Oh, retention bonds. That's the chunk of money the client holds back until they are absolutely sure the building works, right? So the contractor isn't just going to walk away from minor defects.
You've got it. The CA ensures all obligations are met so that final massive payout is finally released.
You know, hearing you describe this whole balancing act, I actually have an analogy.
Oh, let's hear it.
It sounds to me like the CA is essentially the project's immune system. Think about it.
Okay, I'm tracking.
The builders, the cranes, the project managers, they are the muscle and the skeleton. They are moving the physical body forward. But the CA is the white blood cells.
Oh, I like that.
Right. They are constantly scanning the body of the project for infections, like an unapproved design change or a missed insurance document, or even just a handshake agreement that wasn't put in writing.
Yeah, those are exactly the kinds of infections they look for.
And they attack those little infections early to keep the overall commercial health of the project on track.
I love that analogy because it really highlights the mechanism of the job. If you don't have white blood cells catching those minor infections early, they spread.
And in construction, what does that spread look like?
Well, a missing document or an unapproved variation isn't just an annoyance. It is a literal vector for commercial leakage.
Commercial leakage. That sounds expensive.
Very. If the CA doesn't catch a problem when it's just a minor delay, it metastasizes into formal litigation by the end of the project. And litigation is a disease that can completely bankrupt a construction firm.
Which really illuminates why that changing claims phase is so high stakes. And, reading through this source material, I learned about a mechanism in these contracts that sounds like an absolute nightmare.
Let me guess. The time bar.
Yes, the time bar. It sounds terrifying.
Oh, it is. If you want to see a seasoned, tough-as-nails construction manager break into a cold sweat, just whisper the words, missed time bar, in their ear.
So for the uninitiated listener, let's break down why this is so scary. A time bar is a strict clause buried in the contract.
Very strict.
It basically states that if you experience a delay or an extra cost, and you fail to provide formal written notice of that event within a strictly defined countdown, say, like 14 days, you permanently void your legal right to claim any additional time or money, period.
It is a brutal mechanism, but clients use it to force early communication.
So they don't get hit with a surprise bill a year later.
Exactly. Let's put this into a real-world scenario to show you the immense pressure the CA is under.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine your company is building a massive infrastructure project. Out of nowhere, a freak, unprecedented storm hits.
Like a once-in-a-century flood.
Right. The site floods, destroying a week's worth of work and pushing the entire schedule back by a whole month.
Okay, well, clearly that's an act of God. It's not the contractor's fault. So, in theory, you are fully entitled to claim the cost of the cleanup and get an extension on your final deadline.
In theory, yes, absolutely. But the clock is ticking. Your contract has a 14-day time bar for weather-related delay notices. Out on the site, everyone is panicking. The project manager is waist-deep in mud, frantically renting water pumps, trying to save the million-dollar equipment. They are purely in survival mode.
The last thing on their mind is legal paperwork.
Exactly. But the CA is sitting there looking at a countdown clock.
And if they don't force the issue?
If no one actually writes and submits the formal legal notice to the client by day 14, you get nothing.
Wait, really? Nothing at all?
Nothing. If the CA submits that notice on day 15, the entitlement is entirely voided.
Oh my God.
The contractor will have to eat millions of dollars in cleanup costs, plus face massive financial penalties for delivering the project a month late, all because of a single missed deadline on a piece of paper.
That is just wild. Millions of dollars evaporating over a 24-hour delay in sending an email. So how does a CA actually defend against this? I'm guessing they have to do way more than just set a calendar reminder on their phone.
Oh, definitely. They meticulously manage what the guide calls a notice engine.
A notice engine. That sounds intense.
It is. This isn't just a basic spreadsheet. It's a highly disciplined, fully auditable defense system. They are tracking notice periods, submission deadlines, and response windows for dozens of overlapping events at once.
And beating the time bar is just the beginning, right? Because the guide details this grueling process of actually building the claim once the notice is in.
Yeah, the real work starts after the notice.
It's not enough to just say, hey, it rained, we need money.
Far from it. Beating the time bar is just step 1 and 2. The event happens, and the notice is submitted.
Okay, so what's step 3?
Then comes step 3, the scramble for records. The CA has to gather contemporary proof, photos, daily site logs, weather reports, shift sheets.
Basically proving exactly what happened and who was actually impacted.
Right. Which leads to step 4, entitlement. The CA has to dig back into that 500-page contract. They have to prove that this specific storm actually meets the legal definition required to ask for relief.
Wow, and then?
Then, step 5. They have to establish cause and effect. You have to draw a direct, undeniable, and documented line between the floodwater and the specific delay to, say, the concrete pour.
Ah, so you can't just claim the whole project was delayed if only one little corner of the site flooded.
Exactly. You have to prove the specific impact. And finally, step 6, which the guide calls quantum.
Quantum.
Yeah, establishing the exact mathematically sound financial or time impact that you are submitting for payment.
You know, when you look at that massive, rigorous process event, notice, records, entitlement, cause and effect, quantum, count, WID, you realize that a CA cannot just be a passive administrator.
No, they have to act like an investigative journalist, a lawyer, and an accountant all rolled into one.
Which brings up a huge question for me. Who actually wants to do this job?
It takes a very specific type of person.
Right. How do you build a person capable of handling that kind of pressure without making a fatal error? The source material refers to the ideal candidate as a T-shaped professional.
The T-shape is a really brilliant conceptual model for hiring.
Break that down for us.
So the broad horizontal bar across the top of the T represents a wide base of knowledge across multiple disciplines. For a CA, this means technical acumen, understanding basic engineering principles and risk management.
So they need to understand the blueprints and the math, even if they aren't the primary engineers drawing them up.
Yes, because you can't translate a project you don't physically understand. That broad base also includes commercial management, like cost control and payment valuations.
And software, right?
Crucially, software mastery. You aren't tracking millions of dollars and thousands of documents on a legal pad. They need to master industry-standard platforms.
Like Primavera P6 for complex scheduling.
Exactly, and tools like Aconex or Procore for document control.
Okay, so that's the wide, multidisciplinary top bar. But it was the vertical stem of the T, the deep, specialized expertise that totally surprised me.
Really? Why did that surprise you?
Well, the guide specifically isolates soft skills, and more specifically, written communication as the absolute pinnacle skill for a CA.
Yeah, it's essential.
But when I think of heavy construction, I think of physics, hard math, engineering degrees. The idea that writing an email is the most critical skill on a billion-dollar concrete and steel project feels entirely counterintuitive.
I mean, it does sound strange at first, but think back to the storm scenario we just talked about.
Okay.
We established that millions of dollars are saved or lost based entirely on formal notices. Words are essentially the load-bearing structures of the project's finances.
The load-bearing structure.
Yeah. The CA has to write with the precision of a hostile litigator to protect the company's rights. But, and here is the real friction they have to do it with the diplomacy of an ambassador.
Because if you send an overly aggressive, hyper-legal letter to the client every single time a truck is 5 minutes late, you are going to destroy the working relationship.
Exactly. The whole project will just grind to a halt in a flurry of petty disputes. The CA has to firmly enforce the contract without alienating the people who are actually paying the bills.
It requires an immense amount of emotional intelligence and professional judgment.
Absolutely.
So what are the educational pathways to actually develop that bizarre mix of skills? You can't just get a degree in diplomatic construction law.
Well, it generally starts with a core bachelor's degree in construction management, quantity surveying, civil engineering, or commercial law.
Okay, that makes sense.
From there, professionals pursue high-value certifications. We're talking about credentials from RICS, that's the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, or becoming a certified project management professional.
The guide also mentioned FIDIC contracts as a highly sought-after expertise, right?
Yes. A FIDIC is essentially the international gold standard for construction contract templates. If you understand how a FIDIC contract allocates risk, you can work on almost any mega project in the world.
But despite all those degrees and certifications, the guide stresses something it calls the practical edge.
And this might be the most important takeaway for anyone considering the field. You cannot learn the rhythm of a construction site from a textbook.
You have to actually be there.
Practical on-site experience is vital. The best CAs often transition into the role from field operations or project controls because they actually have dirt on their boots.
They know how hard it is to get a stressed-out foreman to fill out a daily log.
Exactly. So they know how to navigate the human element of gathering those contemporary records.
Okay, so we've painted a picture of a role that demands a grueling, highly specialized hybrid skill set. You have to be this T-shaped professional with the precision of a lawyer, the broad knowledge of an engineer, the thick skin of a negotiator, and the muddy boots of a builder.
It is a lot to ask of one person.
It really is. So if I'm a listener thinking about this career, my next question is obvious. What is the actual reward for carrying all that weight? Let's talk about the 2026 salary guide data.
The reward is substantial, both financially and in career progression. Contract administration is uniquely positioned as a proven launchpad into senior commercial leadership.
So you don't just stay a CA forever.
No, not usually.
What does that climb actually look like?
It's a very structured trajectory. You typically spend your first 3 years as a junior CA, just learning the ropes.
Makes sense.
From years 3 to 7, you are a standard contract administrator running that daily notice engine we talked about.
Okay.
Years 7 to 12, you move into a senior CA role, handling much more complex claims. By years 12 to 18, you are a lead CA, overseeing whole teams.
And then what's the peak?
Eventually, after 15-plus years, this path culminates in roles like contracts manager or commercial director.
And I'm looking at the global compensation data for 2026 here, and the financial jump as you move up that ladder is really aggressive.
It scales incredibly fast.
Yeah, you start in the mid-5 figures as a junior, around 35 to 60,000 US dollars, which is a solid entry point. But once you master the role and hit that standard CA level, the US benchmark from salary.com puts the average base right around $93,000.
And it scales rapidly from there.
It does. Senior and lead CAs are pulling anywhere from $120,000 to $170,000. If you make it to contracts manager, you are easily clearing $150,000 to well over $200,000 in base salary alone.
And keep in mind, that is just the base salary in standard commercial construction. The guide points out a critical factor that anyone looking at this career really needs to understand.
Sector impacts.
Yes, sector impacts.
Right, because if you take these skills to the truly massive international mega projects, the math changes completely.
Completely. We are talking about liquefied natural gas facilities, offshore wind farms, global mining operations, or massive EPC contracts.
EPC being engineering, procurement, and construction, right?
Yes. These projects are often in very remote, harsh environments. To attract top T-shaped talent to the middle of a desert or, an offshore rig, companies offer massive multipliers.
Multipliers like what, exactly?
Well, significant housing allowances, rotation schedules where you might work 4 weeks on and then get 4 weeks entirely off with fully paid flights home.
Wow, that's huge.
Plus, in some international jurisdictions, there are massive tax advantages. When you add all these premiums up, a $93,000 base salary can easily transform into a total compensation package pushing $150,000 or more just by shifting into the mega project sector.
Now, I have to imagine that to a lot of construction executives, paying a glorified administrator $150,000 or pushing $200,000 for a senior manager feels like a massive overhead expense.
Sure.
It feels like a back office drain.
It might feel that way to a poorly run company, but smart executives look at the scales of return on investment. We just spent 20 minutes talking about time bars.
Right.
We talked about a single missed email causing a company to eat millions of dollars in unapproved variations after a storm.
Yeah, that storm scenario was brutal.
The guide illustrates this beautifully with a visual of a scale. On one side, you have the chaos of poor administration, commercial leakage, lost entitlement, payment disputes, and ultimately, litigation.
Which is inevitable on a big job.
A single mega project generates thousands of documents and changes. Without a CA, it is guaranteed commercial leakage.
Okay, so what's on the other side of the scale?
On the other side, you have the CA maintaining that disciplined notice engine, securing the company's rights, and diffusing disputes before they ever escalate. A $100,000 or even $200,000 salary is literally a rounding error compared to the cost of a single $10 million lawsuit.
They're essentially a living, breathing insurance policy that pays out every single day.
Precisely. A great contract administrator literally pays for themselves many times over.
That is a phenomenal way to summarize it. I mean, the contract administrator isn't just filing paperwork. They are the definitive manager of the contractual engine.
Exactly.
They are the bilingual translator turning dense legal risk into daily field execution. It demands an incredibly deep hybrid skill set to protect a project's commercial health. But in return, it offers a highly lucrative, fast-tracked global career.
It is demanding, high-pressure work, for sure. But for those who can master the machinery of deadlines and diplomacy, the path is wide open.
Which leaves me with a final, slightly different thought for you, the listener, to mull over today.
Oh, I'm curious where you're taking this.
Well, we've been talking about massive construction sites and billion-dollar mega projects, but I want you to think about your own life and your own career. We all navigate implicit contracts, right? Fuzzy deadlines, and scope creep in our daily jobs, even if we work completely outside of the construction industry.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone deals with that.
Whether you're a graphic designer dealing with a client who keeps asking for one more quick edit, or a software developer dealing with feature creep, or just someone managing a household renovation.
Scope creep is everywhere.
Right. So what would happen if you adopted the mindset of a contract administrator? What if you applied a rigorous notice engine to your own daily negotiations?
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
If you treated every casual request like it had a strict time bar attached to it,
Yeah.
forcing yourself to document and clarify expectations immediately, could you stop your own personal commercial leakage?